joining me now to break down some best bets for week 12 of the NFL season and to discuss some of the biggest storylines of the week is our guy from the 3 and Out podcast, John Middlekauff. John, how you making out today?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you doing?
Not bad. Sleeping pretty good because I'm turning a lot of these primetime games off early. Went to bed early last night after watching Cowboys and Raiders. Okay, so we're not going to be discussing those teams on the show today, but the team I do want to start off with here is the Denver Broncos. Entering week 11, a lot of people would have labeled them as a fraud, great record, but just limping by teams like the Raiders, the Jets, and the Giants. But I'm starting to think we got to take this team very seriously here, John. They have a win over the Chiefs. They have a win in Philadelphia. They are the number one overall seed in the AFC entering the week, plus 550 to win the AFC. Should we be taking the Broncos seriously?
Well, I think anytime you have a defense that is that dominant and that fast, obviously it's a passing league, and they have a chance to set the record with sacks, right? And they're not rolling out. I mean, they have good pass rushers, but I don't think we would. They don't have a Myles Garrett. They don't have a Lawrence Taylor. Benito, Allen, just every guy on that front feels like they are going 100 miles an hour. So when you have a unit that dominant, you have a chance to win a Super Bowl. And I was probably about a decade ago when the Broncos were good. They won the Super Bowl with an offense. People forget, and this is how time works. Peyton Manning could barely throw it 20 yards. He got benched in the middle of the season by Gary Kubiak for Brock Osweiler, Arizona State legend. But he could not throw. And even in the playoffs, he could have a drive or two, but they were not what they had been in previous years of being this explosive offense. But their defense, every single guy was good. Their defensive line was unstoppable. Their linebackers were good, and their DBs were fantastic. So they have proven. Now, the league's a little different now. Obviously, the AFC, they had to beat Tom Brady. And we just saw, though, they beat Patrick Mahomes. And obviously, comparing Bo Nix to Peyton Manning seems crazy. But like that version of Peyton Manning physically had nothing what Bo Nix has. And we just saw, right? He actually played pretty well in that game. For the first time, he calmed down a little bit. He wasn't skipping balls. Obviously, that final drive, a couple big third downs, the 2nd and 8 pass that essentially won it. And I think we got to be real. I mean, this guy's a living legend and one of the all-time great players in the history of the league. But he outplayed Patrick Mahomes. He just did. Patrick threw an awful interception down near the goal line. But that's what happens when you play a great defense. Like you're not going to score many points on Denver. So, and here's the other thing. They have a championship coach. Like, not only, obviously, it's been a long time since he won the Super Bowl, but throughout the 2010s, like, this guy's a playoff level winning coach. So they have the formula with a great defense. They have a championship level coach, and they just have a young quarterback that they have to, just continue to help grow, because the games that he had earlier in the season where he, had a couple drives at the end, kind of JJ McCarthy style, that will get you beat in the playoffs. The game that he just had, but why did he have it? It was at home. And that's where I think Denver having home field advantage. The year Peyton Manning went to the Super Bowl and won it with the bad arm neck, they had home field advantage. And that was the year they beat the Patriots. I remember, I think Gronk had a bad ankle, but the defense carried them. And that's, I think, the formula here for Denver.
Yeah, that number one seed would be absolutely massive for them. Josh Allen, Mahomes coming to town, those guys are a different story. But are you trusting Drake May, Daniel Jones, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Herbert on the road in Denver in January? I most certainly am not. Okay, so another team that a lot of people would have put that fraud label on, and maybe still are, these Chicago Bears. I find myself looking at the NFL standings yesterday morning, and I'm thinking, like, what the hell is going on? Really? The Bears are in first place? In the NFC North, a lot of luck at the end of these games. At the end of the day, the only thing that matters is winning. But these walk-off wins where there's an element of luck involved for them, plus 400 right now to win the division. Do you think that's a good bet?
Well, they got one thing going for them right now, is they are a crazy turnover team. I was clicking because I was looking at Myles Garrett. I wanted to see how many more sacks he had than the next guy. I expected to be like 7. Brian Burns actually has 13 sacks. So Myles Garrett's lead isn't as crazy as it seems when you watch him play, because it feels like Myles Garrett's going to get 40 sacks. But right under the sack page is the interception page. The Bears have three of the top four guys, Byard, Edmonds, and Wright, who just had a pick the other day, lead the league. I mean, they have a combined
Wow.
9. They have 13 interceptions between the three of them. So you're talking about a defense that's just creating turnovers. And if we're going to do that, like I don't care how leaky the thing is, and it is, I wouldn't consider the Bears defense good, but the easiest way to be a good, to be a competitive defense is to catch the other team's passes. And here's the other thing, and I give Ben Johnson a lot of credit, and it was just on full display against Kevin O'Connell. I think he's the Midwest version of Kyle Shanahan in the sense that Kyle's a throwback to the 70s, 80s, and 90s of these coaches, like his father, that would just run the ball relentlessly. Last night on Monday Night Football, they were talking, Brian Schottenheimer, obviously his dad, Marty. Now, Marty was a defensive guy, but when you think Marty Schottenheimer, you think defense, running game, and run the ball, and run the ball some more. And that's what Ben Johnson did. And that was a big reason. Like, it's not like they just beat the Minnesota Vikings by 20 points. That was a coin flip game. And he refused to let Caleb and just his offense make a mistake. And they are one of the best rushing teams in the league. They have a defense that turns it over at a really, really high clip. And it's just a formula. Now, am I going to take him over the Packers? Like, how's Caleb going to look against that Packers defense? Right? Detroit, the problem with Dan Campbell the other night is like, you're playing the Eagles. They can't score points. This is a defensive battle, Dan. You don't need to be – these field goals are going to be precious at the end of the game. It could be the difference of, like, you now just need a field goal to win. Plus, your quarterback's not playing well. But the Bears aren't the Eagles. They're not that physical. So I'd be a little stunned if they won the division, but what Ben Johnson has done throughout this season, I think he's right there. You could argue, I knew Mike Vrabel was a good coach. We've seen him be a head coach before and have the number one seed. You never know with the coordinator. I've been blown away. I mean, the Bears fans, obviously, you're excited. 7-3. I mean, last year we're just like a week away from remember that embarrassing Thanksgiving loss when he at the end that it got Eberflus fired the next day. This is the polar opposite. It's like I don't even think this team's that good, but the coaching, if they get 10 or 11 wins, I'd have no problem. I don't care how many games Vrabel wins because I knew Vrabel was a good coach. We
Yeah.
didn't know this about Ben Johnson, so props to him.
Okay, so one team that won't be in the mix to win the NFC North is the Minnesota Vikings. We
No.
talked about it. The decision at quarterback has seriously backfired for them. JJ
Whoa.
McCarthy looking pretty ugly out there. What is your prediction for who will be the starting quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings week 1 next season?
Well, here's what I know. If it continues like this, it'll 100% not be JJ McCarthy. And I think the only reason we're talking about JJ McCarthy not getting benched, right, is because their quarterback situation. Carson Wentz got injured. And you could argue having Carson Wentz as your backup was pretty risky. But if they just had somewhat of a competitive backup that had experience, I'm just going to pull a Gardner Minshew type. I think JJ McCarthy would not be starting this week. I mean, that was a horrendous performance. And this is not a team that's like, let him grow. It's like they won 14 games last year. And we're 60 minutes away from being the number one seed. So I think JJ McCarthy's career with the Minnesota Vikings is in major trouble. Now, maybe they handle it this offseason. I think they're going to treat it with kid gloves because that's how quarterbacks get treated. Fair or not. I would say Mac Jones, would they trade for Mac Jones? But they just used a lot of draft capital, in on Dallas Turner, on JJ McCarthy. Like, are they just going to trade and keep chasing this quarterback situation? This quarterback draft doesn't look great. So to me, it's a Mac Jones, a Gardner Minshew type guy. But the difference of they are in a position now that the 49ers found themselves in with Trey Lance and the Indianapolis Colts found themselves in with Anthony Richardson. The difference is that the 49ers got a gift from the football gods with the 7th round pick in Purdy. And, Daniel Jones just, is having one of the great resurrection seasons we've seen since Sam Darnold. So usually those things don't happen. And you find yourself just in quarterback purgatory, which the Indianapolis Colts would tell Minnesota, like, this could get weird for the next 5 or 6 years. This could get really weird because they're sometimes Daniel Jones, who ironically Minnesota had, listen, they could have gone after Aaron Rodgers. I don't necessarily blame them for not doing that. I think if they could do a redo, though, understand Sam Darnold, they allocated those resources on other players, which I totally understand. I think if they could do a redo, they just would have overspent on Daniel Jones, maybe 1 year, $22 million, and give him a number to keep him because I think if he's on the team, we're looking at a much more competitive offense. Clearly,
You think Kyler Murray could be a good fit? Arizona seems pretty keen to run
no.
him out of town. No, it wouldn't work.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kyler Murray's in a position where I have a hard time seeing other teams value him as a starting quarterback at this point. I mean, it's not like, it just got weird for like a couple games. Like this has been the totality of his career kind of proves what he is more than that one season where if I remember correctly, didn't the Cardinals start like 10-1 and then they ended up 11-5? So it's
Yes.
he's really just had one really good stretch in his career. He does have some physical gifts, but I mean the Cardinals, like a couple years in, we're like, yeah, we're cool with Jacoby Brissett. I think Kyler now could he. The other thing is they're gonna have to cut him, right?
Hmm.
No one is trading for that contract. So if you cut him, would I take a 1 year, $10 million flyer? Is he better than JJ McCarthy? 100%. I do think with the Kyler thing, though, you got to factor in the money. If he's just available on the street, then yeah, I think people would be interested. Is he interested at this point in time? I mean, does he even? He's a major wild card, which I'm not a fan of personally as a player.
Okay, John, we're not far off from another head coach hiring cycle. We know the Giants and Titans are going to be in the mix for a new coach. Other possibilities, the Cardinals, they haven't looked good. Maybe the Browns want a fresh start. Can the Raiders justify bringing Pete Carroll
No.
back? Maybe the Falcons, maybe the Dolphins. I call these marketing campaigns. I remember Mike McDaniel when he was with the San Francisco 49ers. All of a sudden, this guy was popping up everywhere. You're seeing him at press conferences, cracking jokes. The media loved him. And he's kind of being propped up as this next head coach. And he goes on interviews, gets hired by the Dolphins. Who are the hot coordinators that we can expect to see getting interviews and possibly landing a job?
Well, there are not some. There's no Ben Johnson in this cycle. Now, part of that was he had built up over the course of a couple years, so his name was really, really like he was the most famous coordinator by a mile. And then there's doesn't feel like there's quite a Liam Cohen, who had kind of had some buzz. He had coached Will Levis at Kentucky when Will Levis was actually good. Had worked for McVay. Kubiak, he was just fired by the Saints, and I just watched him against the Rams. It's not. I don't think people are just going to be beating down the doors for him. So I do think there is going to be some quote unquote retread potential. I think Robert Saleh, who I would have said a month ago, I was like, he's not going to get a job. I think he might get the benefit of the doubt. The Jets are just a joke, right? I think Matt Nagy is a guy that when you look at his Bears tenure, it's like he had to coach Mitch Trubisky and Justin Fields. I actually think that's aged a little bit better. He made the playoffs 2 times out of 4 years. So, especially with his connection in Tennessee with Borgonzi, it's hard to judge the Steelers. I mean, their personnel's not great, but I actually think Arthur Smith, a lot like Nagy and Robert Saleh, goes, maybe he's not that. Maybe it was the Falcons. So I think those three guys who would not be viewed as like a Vrabel candidate, but relative to this class, who are, how many more Shanahan, McVay type guys? They don't really have anyone else, in the pipeline right now that feel like that. Kubiak would be the one guy, but I don't know. So I think the Saleh, Arthur Smith, Matt Nagy crew are going to get multiple interviews in multiple places. And you bring up, Arizona. I also think for these guys, if you're especially Saleh, who's making a ton of money now with a stable organization, like would the Cardinals' job is terrible. This place it's an awful job. The Titans' job is terrible. Like these jobs are awful. They don't have players. The Cardinals have a couple players, but the ownership is just embarrassingly bad. They just run through people constantly. Like at least with the Giants, it's New York City, it's the massive franchise, and they have this young quarterback. I would be very hesitant. Now, here's part of the problem. I was thinking about this the other day. The same like 10 or 11 jobs come open constantly. It's not like
Yes.
the Steelers, the Ravens, the Chiefs, the 49ers, like the Rams, like these jobs are never open. So it's just the same crappy jobs constantly like, "Hey, do you want our job?" And listen, these is a lot of money and you get to make the decisions no longer. You're just giving suggestions. So I do get it. But just know more than likely you're going to this place to get fired in a couple years, and you're basically just doing a money grab.
Yeah, if the Dolphins move off Mike McDaniel, which it doesn't look like they're going to do at this point, I think they would have some interest in Robert Saleh, basically based on the fact that he's almost the exact opposite of Mike McDaniel. You know, he's a leader of men, tough guy, defense, not offense. So yeah, we'll see what happens there. But
Do you think Mike survives?
yes, the Dolphin. This classic Dolphins, John. They got a very easy schedule coming up. They got the Saints. They got the Bengals coming to 10. They got the Jets still. They're going to finish probably 7-9, 7-10, and they'll come back.
That game was atrocious the other day.
Well, his play calling, the short yardage play calling is god awful. I'm saying, I think I brought it up last week to you. Calling fade routes on 4th and goal, and McDaniel is going to be back. Classic Miami Dolphins. Never good enough to win in the playoffs. Never bad enough to be in the top 10 in the NFL draft. Okay, let's get into some best bets of the week here. We got two, and then we're going to discuss Chiefs Colts. First up, a couple teams looking to bounce back here. Well, one team really looking to bounce back. The Vikings going to Green Bay to take on the Packers, and you like the Packers favored by 6.5.
Well, this is simply, can you see JJ McCarthy having any success with that defense? There was a moment in that Giants game where I thought, like, are they going to lose and this Packer season is about to crumble? They figured it out. Jordan made some plays. Obviously, losing Josh Jacobs allowed their offense to, kind of come through. I do think this is a moment. If you're a defensive coordinator and you're a defensive player, you got to be licking your lips to play this guy. I mean, his balls are just flying all over the map. Now, I haven't checked the weather report. I would imagine it's not going to be 70 and sunny, so it's going to be cold. The thing with Kevin O'Connell, and I get it. He's a nice guy. He seems like the players really like him, and he's had some success. But in game situations, he will not adjust. Like he would just, if he could, he would throw it 50 times a game. He will just never stop throwing the ball. It's like, Kevin, your quarterback is JJ McCarthy. There was an out route that flew over Jefferson's head that I think Kevin Garnett, on a trampoline couldn't have touched. It was like, this is crazy. So to me, I get it's a lot of points, these divisional matchups. It's just simply like a bet against JJ McCarthy on the road against, especially, I mean, that front, Micah Parsons. This is going to be a big chance. If he keeps it close, I will tip my hat and say, he showed some mental toughness bouncing back after, what would you say? I mean, we've had worse games, but just in terms of like a good team, that was about as embarrassing of an effort from a quarterback. Of like these passes, even Brady was trying to be nice. He's like, it's not even close. I saw Orlovsky say yesterday, it's one thing to miss. Quarterbacks miss. Joe Montana missed. He's missing by 7 yards.
Yeah, it looks like a good under game with those two defenses. Okay, so we got a good game here on Sunday night. It might finally break this run of awful primetime games that we've had. We have the Bucks in Los Angeles taking on the Rams, 6.5-point spread, and you like the underdog Bucks to keep it close.
Well, they actually showed a lot of life in that Bills game. If it wasn't for Josh Allen going Steph Curry, Michael Jordan, I mean that was a Herculean effort from a quarterback. I'm not as dialed in on Syracuse football, but all of a sudden I had to Google mid-game. I'm like, who is 44? Because it wasn't just, it's one thing to make a couple plays. I mean, his speed, he's just slicing and dicing them, catching balls out of the backfield. Like they're game planning their offense around the guy. The Bucks were hanging in there. It just, when you have a guy score 6 touchdowns, and let's face it, is he going to win the MVP or whatever? I don't know. That ebb and flows by the week. He's the best player in the NFL. I really think for the last couple years. Lamar, especially now, he's a little banged up, looks just a little off. But Josh Allen is the best player in the NFL right now. And he's the reigning MVP, and that performance against the Buccaneers when his team really, really needed it. But I came away like the Bucks, they're fighting. They're in a little bit now. The Panthers are, I think most football fans have no clue. They could win if they beat the 49ers, and their offense looks pretty good, and the Niners defense is in shambles. Well, while it would be surprising, all of a sudden they'd be 7-5, and they still play the Bucks a couple times. They would be more than alive to not just be a playoff team, but to win the division. The Bucks, the Falcons are dead. The Saints are dead. But I think they look in their rearview mirror and they see this little guy, Bryce Young, and Dave Canales, in this little medium T-shirt that he wears on game day with the Rolex, just calling plays, scoring points. The Bucks, I have a hard time just seeing them just get blown out like 3 times in a row. Now, maybe it just turns out they're bad, and Baker's banged up, and they've just lost so many guys. But I think this is a little bit of a kitchen sink game for them. And if you're the Rams, I don't want to say that was the Super Bowl against Seattle. You still have a lot of season left, but that was, I mean, the biggest regular season game they've had in a while. Kitchen sink game for them. You have to think they just come down a little bit and take a deep breath. I could see this being like, 17-10 or something at halftime with the Buccaneers with the lead. Now, I don't know if they win the game outright, but I'd be a little stunned if we don't get their best effort in a long time. Wouldn't you?
Yeah, and could you imagine a world where we get the Panthers and Jaguars in the playoffs, but the Chiefs and Lions and Ravens are out? If the season ended today, no Chiefs, no Lions, no Ravens in the playoffs. Still a long way to go. So let's discuss
I'm pretty. I mean, have we seen any news on the Rodgers injury? Feels like they've been kind of quiet on that front, huh?
a break, but they didn't say how long he's going to be out for. It's on his non-throwing hand, obviously. So
But
not
he's
quite sure
not
on that.
playing the next couple weeks, probably.
No, he's going to be out. But the Ravens. I was wondering if they were going to lose that game against the Browns there last week. So
Well, they were going to, and then Dylan got knocked out, and I think they realized this guy hasn't practiced or played, and they started feasting, started blitzing. They were in major trouble, and Miles Garrett looked like Lawrence Taylor in that game. Lamar and the offense looked terrible. They got very, very lucky that the concussion happened, and that tilted the game, right?
Yeah, a little spotty, not quite the shoe-in that everyone thinks they will be.
No.
Before we go, I got to get your opinion on this game. When's the last time the Kansas City Chiefs had a must-win regular season game? They got one this week. They're favored by 3 points against the Colts, who are coming in off their bye. Total 50.5. I think that's a little high. What do you make of the side in this one, though, John?
Well, it was last week. I mean, when's the last time? It shows you when you dig yourself a hole, and the Ravens were in this position a little bit at 1-4. You get November games that are kind of make or break, and they didn't hide from it. Patrick Mahomes last week was outspoken about like the division would somewhat be over for us if we lose this game. That was a huge game for them. Mahomes didn't play that well. Now they're playing an elite defense. No one plays that well against Denver, but they Chris Jones showed up, right? Travis Kelsey showed up, and I don't know. I mean, I'm a little nervous now. Like, am I going to take Daniel Jones in a situation against the Chiefs when now their backs are really against the wall? Like, this would be a position where they would be in major trouble if they lost this game because all of a sudden you're just an injury in the middle of a game against a random team. If like Chris Jones pulled a hamstring in a Charger game or whatever, all of a sudden you're down again. Your season's over, which it happens. Like, when's the next time you think we're going to see a team go to 5 Super Bowls in 6 years? My
Oof.
guess is it's not going to happen in a long time, if ever again, especially with the salary cap as it gets more convoluted and these quarterbacks get so expensive. I mean, honestly, the Eagles run right now is pretty impressive. They've been to 2 Super Bowls in the last 3 years. They're going to have every bit of a good chance, right, to get the number 1 seed. If you get the number 1 seed, you're just 120 minutes away from being there and playing at Philly, as we've seen with that defense. So if Philly made 3 Super Bowls in 4 years, that's like the modern day dynasty. I mean, that's incredible. So I would expect the Chiefs to win this game, but who knows? I mean, they played a lot of similar games over the last 2 years, and last year they won them all. And this year,
Yeah.
I actually think they're better than last year. Like they definitely look better, right, offensively, but they just have.
Statistically, they are better, but not obviously not from the win-loss perspective.
He
So
misses a lot. One thing, and listen, I would imagine if they just get an off season together, he got injured in the first game, so just the practice time. But him and Worthy, there's just a connection that's a little off. I mean, the connection he had with Tyreek Hill, he's hitting him in stride all the time. Now,
yeah.
maybe he was younger, maybe he was thinking less. I don't know, but the connection with him, because Coach Reed's calling these deep bombs, and he is, we're taking, a dump on Bo Nix. He's like, can't hit a deep pass. I'm watching Patrick Mahomes. He doesn't hit that many either.
Yeah, Worthy's not quite ascending at the level people thought he would be at this point of his
Who do
career.
you like the Chiefs in this game?
I like the under. I lean more towards totals. I think it's too high for a Kansas City Chiefs game. They play in a lot more lower scoring games than high scoring ones. Daniel Jones outside. I know they're coming off their bye as well. So, yeah, tricky one. It's hard to, the Chiefs, you always, when it's a big important game like this, you always kind of lean back on their reputation of winning a lot of big games, but they're not winning a lot of those big games this season. They lost to the Eagles, they lost to the Bills, they lost last week in Denver. So it is a tricky one, but it is hard to stay on top forever. John, we'll leave it at that for today. Great spot as always. Thanks for joining. Best of luck with those bets, and we'll catch you again next week.
See you, buddy.